In front of HR, I always find myself as an odd man out. And I'm also very scared of HR. And there is a history of it. When I was completing my MBA and I was doing an MBA project, and I did not submit the report to that company, and that HR called me. HR, you have not submitted the report to HR. They're not giving you your certificate. So from that time, that history of being scared of HR has been with me. And I'm sure आज भी अगर HR से phone आ जाए, you are worried. All right, so good evening everyone, and thank you for having me here today. My situation in front of HR is mostly like, if you suddenly invite a stand-up comedian in front of, let's say, a Kavi Sammelan. So I am by no means and by no right qualified to, talk or give you something around HR or what best practices can be. You are the experts. But I'll try to use my own style and way. Of course, probably you don't know that I'm India's one and probably only motivational speaker with music. Of course, I'm not carrying my guitar. But I'll try to use some aspect of it to infuse what I'm trying to say here. Of course, the context is talent attraction, and my topic was who moved my talent, attracting talent, discovering and engaging with it in these unprecedented times. By the way, who has read this book, Who Moved My Cheese? Okay, I could see around 7-8 hands. All right. Would you want to take a shot? What's the story around it?
So I'm not an avid reader, right, first of all. So my AVP suggested me to read this book. The reason was why it has only 30 pages, I guess. So you can just easy to finish. So I wanted to start reading, and then this was the first book that I read.
Okay.
So it talks about, I'm just giving you a nutshell. If you don't improve, or if you don't sharpen your axe, basically, then you're going to lose one day.
Absolutely.
So that's
absolutely. People who have read this, do they echo with the sentiment, right? Yeah. Complacency is no longer, you can't survive with it. And that's what Dr. Ravi, when his presentation was going on, he talked about if you don't evolve, then there is a problem, right? So, that's why the title that I chose today was Who Moved My Talent? And I come from marketing background, and when I said that I am, square, what do they call it as, round peg in a square hole, right? So it's like, I work very closely with HR, but I am responsible for talent attraction. That's what my role is. Though I'm a pure play marketer, I may not be writing job descriptions, but I can help you find talent. That's what my role is in my current role at HCLTech. Some important thing that I want to talk about in my 15 minutes or so that I'll try not to bore you. But again, drawing inspiration from my own style where I used to talk and sing. So the situation of HR is, and with due respect, nothing derogatory or nothing to offend you, but the situation is like, एक बाबा बुल्ले शाह की पोइट्री होती थी, की जाना में, होई रे बाबा की जाना में. Any one of you have heard that? Okay, I'll sing a line of it. If you like it, you can sing along. की जाना में, होई रे बाबा की जाना में, होई रे बाबा की जाना में. So basically, Bulle Shah was, trying to question himself that in a world full of intellectuals, I am the one who don't know anything. I am learning from experience. I am learning from everybody around me, and therefore, when I talk to people or when I interact with people, I am as good as you are, right? So that's the situation of HR. By the way, I am from marketing. That's the situation of marketing too. It's not that it's any different. But anyways, some of the key things that I want to focus upon today are, hi Amit, is a good old friend. The first shift that I'm talking about is technology shift. How many of you have seen this or witnessed this in your career that you are, whatever role you are seeing? Have you seen a technology shift? Yes or no? Yes. All right. What kind of shift? Is it enabling you or is it bothering you now? It's enabling you. So when Chat GPT and generative AI starts writing descriptions, does it start bothering you? No, absolutely not. You have to evolve, as as the theme of Sparsh Global School has been. So, change in technology has been a big, big shift from the times that when I was in my school and I was studying. We would still go to job portals and create resumes. Again, some of these practices still exist, but there has been a major shift. Now, recruiters are texting you on WhatsApp, please send me a CV right out here. Another thing, for example, in 1985, I'm sure some of you would have read about this, McKinsey released a paper which talked about that ATS will solve all your problems. It will be a panacea for all your recruitment problems. Did it ever solve? People who have ATS have their own share of problems. People who do not have their own set of problems. Come 2023, the problems are much more complicated than they used to be. So that's like first shift that has permeated through the industry. And of course, look at, maybe the session was being conducted in 2046, another 20 years from now. The world would be much, much different. But that is one place we cannot ignore. We have to evolve, otherwise, somebody else is going to already looking at your job. The second shift that I want to talk about is a generational shift. When my father was working, the loyalties in a company were very strong. They would work for 30, 40 years in a company. Today, not that loyalties have disappeared, but just that the ecosystem has begun or become like that. So the biggest shift that you see today is there are 2 or 3 generations and maybe 4 working in the organization at the same time. So there will be people who are creating policies, maybe millennials, and then there is the fresh entrant coming into right from colleges who is not interested in the way we work, right? So how do you create policies? How do you create structures and systems that goes to the layers of these generations? So a policy being created from 1980s, it's no longer relevant in 2020 and the times forward. So that's a generational shift. You have multiple generations, including Gen Z and now Gen Alpha, coming into workforce anytime soon. Are we prepared for it? Are we going to attract talent the same way we used to do it historically? And if yes, probably only God helps us. The third shift, so as I mentioned in the beginning, I'll be talking about 4 or 5 important shifts that have happened. So the third shift that I'm talking about is discovery related shift. How do you attract talent? There was a time, and I'm sure all of us, unless somebody is a real Gen Z just out of college out here, in our times we used to read a newspaper called Rozgar Samachar. That was a place to find employment, jobs, or any other opportunity in a public sector, enterprise, and so on and so forth. 10 years forward or 15 years later came things like job portals. Suddenly you had Naukri.com, Monster, and so on and so forth. Of course, different countries will have their own portals. Suddenly that became the norm in terms of how do you attract talent. 15 years before, 70 to 80% of the hiring in companies would have happened through job portals. Today, again, that shift has happened once again. No longer more than 30-35% of hiring in big companies is happening through job portals. Now, are people not applying through job portals? Probably not. Or that's not the right way. Or the platforms are no longer intuitive enough for people to make them apply through them. That's when marketing comes into play. That's when HR needs to collaborate and work with marketing as partners to make sure that JDs are not written, encrypted, or used internal language of a JD is put up on LinkedIn. That keeps happening. That's where you work with marketing as partners and collaborate with people. So for example, in large companies including ours, 45 to 50% hiring happens through social media. And that's a phenomenal shift. It's no longer about just using LinkedIn job description template and putting it out there. It's about using Instagram, it's about using TikTok, whatever works for you. Of course, TikTok is banned in India, but outside of India, it's being used very regularly. So how do we embrace ourselves for this kind of a shift is something that we need to prepare ourselves for. The fourth shift that I would want to talk about is cultural shift. Huge shift. As I talked about, I gave example of my father, who worked as a bank employee for almost 38 years. Of course, we don't see that kind of loyalty, those kind of jobs don't exist anymore. But today in bank, I have my cousin brother's wife is in bank. People at the entry level don't stay for more than 2 years because they are thrown into rural areas and they don't want to go into rural areas, and there's a perpetual problem of hiring and churn happening at the entry level. There is a huge generational shift that has happened, and that has also led to a huge cultural shift. And when I'm talking about cultural shift, it's essentially people are wanting not just salary, but meaning and purpose in their jobs. There is a startup culture that has happened, which has allowed people to scale up opportunities that earlier didn't existed. If you no longer create opportunities for those people, not going to work. So that's the cultural shift that we have to live with if we have to kind of scale up our own efforts. The fifth shift that I would want to talk about is engagement shift. Typically, how many of you hire experienced professionals as a part of your company? Everyone? Typically, in an experienced professional opportunity, there is a notice period, right? Somebody may be working elsewhere. How many of you have engagement programs to engage candidates who have already been offered? Do you engage with them? Or you hope that someday somebody raise the hand? Great. Was this a practice 10 years before? Right. Again, an evolution. If we don't change with times, if we don't engage with people, somebody else is, doing window shopping for them. It's going to pick them up. So again, this is an engagement shift. Something, earlier things were, recruitment systems were designed to fail people. You apply and nobody would care to respond. Now people have to respond, otherwise you will have 5 negative comments on Facebook, LinkedIn that this company doesn't respond, recruiters are just, X, Y, and Z. I don't want to use those words. But the fact of the matter is, the world has changed, and therefore, this shift is also an engagement shift. Earlier, you could care nothing about till the time, they have not joined, why should I care about it? But today, you care about because you have invested time and money to get this person delivered an offer letter, and tomorrow he or she moves to another company, it's again a loss for your enterprise. The sixth and final shift that I wanted to talk about is aspiration shift. Aspirations of people have changed dramatically. Again, also it's coming from the fact that multiple generations are coming. Now, how do we, as HR partners, kind of transfer through these shifts that are happening and prepare ourselves for the better? Any guesses? What are you doing differently? Now, this is where I want more answers. What are you doing differently to transfer through these shifts? You all are already doing engagement programs. What is it that you need to do now that you are not doing and that will help you solve these problems? Any volunteers? Yes?
Embracing technology is very
Absolutely, embracing technology. So are you not doing it or you need to do more?
We need
Do more.
to
All right? Absolutely. Anyone else? What is it that you're not doing? You want to do?
Create a career track before they even join your organization, so that they know where they're heading in the next few years.
All right.
Obviously not 5 years thing anymore, but at least how they can grow within the organization, and while the organization grows, how they grow alongside.
Right. So do
Tagging technology.
validation, or is it seen as an additional layer of cost?
So definitely I am also a marketer like tagging marketing, so I support the HR function in the same way.
Okay.
But yes, we have these discussions in the senior management forums where
Right.
we look at analytics also
Right.
to kind of see where things are moving and how the industry is changing.
Right.
But we cannot replicate everything. That's also
Of course.
every industry has a different flavor.
Of course.
So kind of try to get the best of the world and see how it can be in tune with the organizational culture. Because again, what you talked about earlier also matters here, the organizational culture. That should have that goal.
Right. So with so many shifts happening, what do you think? Anyone, any last guesses before I kind of nothing significant to share?
I think a lot of like you were talking about from the perspective
One
of,
second, sir, wait.
I think we have been
Oh, so I think we have been talking about like how we can attract talent and all, right? But we need to be prepared like how we can evolve as an industry, right? And we have been working on a platform called as On Benchmark, which is a quick talent marketplace, right? So the way you said, like the people who are working for 30, 40 years or like maybe 10 years, and now it's shifting like this. So what we are trying to actually bring for the industry is if you need a resource, because you might need a resource for maybe an hour, for a day, or maybe a year also, right? You cannot have full-time employees. So if you talk about the mature market like US and Singapore, there already the contractual employment,
Yes,
part-time
yes.
employment is there.
Absolutely.
But here in India, because we are having a cultural reason, because I usually say, लड़के की शादी नहीं होती if somebody is working on contract.
Yes, yes.
Right? So that has to be, and it's shifting actually.
Right.
And that's what actually we are also working at on benchmark.com, which is quick talent marketplace. And that has to be, and we are seeing kind of acceptance among the business leader also. And that we have to accept as a leaders, the HR leaders, that we should be okay with if somebody is like for a joining for a day or so, or whenever on demand hiring,
Yeah,
like
staffing.
we are talking about. Yeah.
Sure. Sure.
Okay. One more thing which has struck us big time is the gap, the skill gap at the senior management level also. Because those who are growing with the organization, they set to have a temporization of work mode, which needs a refresher now. Because you cannot be, though we are all growing in financial mode or in designation mode, but the learning sometimes ceases. So the management, top management also needs to understand what is happening at the grassroots level and how the technology is evolving and influencing. So that is one avenue where we are also focusing, where the management. So we do train the trainers and we do the people manager toolboxes and everything, but they need to connect. That delta needs to be taken care of.
Thank you so much. I think these are like wonderful suggestions and points being discussed. With so many shifts happening, I would like to plug in not rather use the word plug in because generally it's associated with sponsorships, but a song that I would say to the situation of again how are we facing or embracing this change or the shifts that are going in technology. This is a poetry, very old poetry and a very old song. Maybe some of you know. It's हो गई है पीर पर्वत अब पिघलनी चाहिए. Anyone knows it? It's a song. Yeah, one person knows it. So at least it's not that old. 2% knows it. So I'll sing this along if you like it, and that's when I'll kind of end it with my final remarks. हो गई है पीर पर्वत सी पिघलनी चाहिए. हो गई है पीर पर्वत सी पिघलनी चाहिए. इस हिमालय से कोई गंगा निकलनी चाहिए. इस हिमालय से कोई गंगा निकलनी चाहिए. सिर्फ हंगामा करना मेरा मकसद नहीं. सिर्फ हंगामा करना मेरा मकसद नहीं. शर्त यह है कि कुछ ना कुछ हकीकत बदलनी चाहिए. Something like that. So the reality is that if we have to go and scale up through these shifts that are happening and will continue to happen, let's assume 20 years from now, assuming we all are in good health and we are here again in this conference room and we are invited once again, will the world be the same place? Obviously not. And therefore, if we have to embrace that change, I think 2 or 3 things that we need to, I know my time is over, so we have to really embrace change. I think something simple that I would suggest is collaborate. As I said in the beginning, I am finding myself, in a community of HR people, just like a stand-up comedian amongst the learned poet fraternity. But if you collaborate, that's the only way. You will never know marketing fully, and marketing will never know HR fully, but that's the way. Otherwise, your website will show old jobs. Your company will never reflect the true data, the true significant value of what you as an enterprise represent, and therefore collaboration is the way forward. Thank you so very much for patiently listening.